watching Marketplace Africa. I'm Robin Kerno in Johannesburg. Now, this area is called 44 Stanley Avenue. It used to be a neighborhood of dilapidated warehouses, old buildings, but it's been rebranded into an up-and-coming design district with boutiques, coffee shops and restaurants. But rebranding something isn't as easy as just giving it a fresh new lick of paint. Rebranding marketing is the forte of Thebe Ikalafeng, and we chatted here over coffee about how to rebrand Africa. What is Africa's brand?
Africa's brand is, at the stage one could say, is a brand that is resilient, a brand that's entrepreneurial, a brand that is creative. That's the brand that we have, but that's on the positive side. On the negative side, you could say Africa is a brand that is much not together, a brand that is perceived to be corrupt, a brand that's perceived to be not in charge of its own agenda, and a brand that is that in many ways has not taken advantage of the opportunities which present itself, which are inherent in Africa. A brand that is owned by others other than owned by itself.
So when a place like Somalia makes the news, the rest of Africa gets tainted with that brand?
The same way as when Zimbabwe makes the news, the rest of Africa gets tainted by that brand, because that is the predominant image that people get to see. And because of lack of exposure to the broader Africa, you get people then making up their minds or concluding based on just that small image.
We're talking perhaps of an outside looking in, somebody sitting somewhere else in the world and has their certain ideas of brand Africa. But the kind of attitudes and stereotypes that Africans have about each other is, I think, even more powerful.
Well, there's been lots of surveys which have been done about Africa's perceptions of Africa themselves and Africans' confidence in their own countries and the continent. And what's disappointing is that it's never ever 100% confident about the future. It's never ever 100% excited about the continent. The biggest crisis, the biggest issue with Africa is that not many Africans identify with the reality of Africa. Because many of us, our idea of success and excellence is what the world outside provides.
But even a place like Zimbabwe is trying to rebrand itself. They've got a new ad campaign, I've seen it. Do you think that it's worth trying to rebrand yourself when the politics isn't fixed?
Well, it depends on how you look at branding. Branding is not an ad campaign. Branding is not a piece of digital material that you take out there. Branding is the total experience. So the mistake that most people have when they look about branding is when they look at just the communication part of it. The communication is almost the last step.
For you as a marketing man, what for you is going to be the big rebranding story of the next 5 years?
Well, the big rebranding story of the next 5 years, the most important one to me is when Africans begin to work together. Because as soon as Africans begin to work together, it means we are beginning to understand the relative strengths and the weaknesses of the various countries. When we are able to leverage the centers of excellences across the continent and be able to take that to the world.
When you talk about sort of matching reality and the brand, a place like South Africa, for example, has a great brand. Mandela, World Cup, democracy, just off the top of my head. But recently there have been a lot of things that might tarnish that brand, increasing corruption, political infighting. Is South Africa as a brand losing its luster a bit?
The South African Constitution, the new one that we know, was signed off by Nelson Mandela in 1996. What we are beginning to see, and that Constitution, if you will, it's the brand plan of South Africa, for lack of a better word. It's the brand blueprint of how South Africa should manifest itself and how South Africa should be experienced by the citizens of South Africa. What you're seeing now, the challenges to corruption, the challenges to leadership, you are seeing that brand being tested. You're not seeing the bad side of South Africa. You're actually seeing the good side of South Africa. Because it means this is a country, it's a maturing democracy where none of those things which perhaps in many other years would have been swept underground, they cannot survive in this new brand.